Please, as we said, don't merely, if I may request you, don't merely listen to words or to the ideas. Listen with your heart and mind, neither taking sides, opposing, or offering your own particular opinion. Just listen. The speaker is doing all the work when he talks. All that you have to do is to listen. And if you know how to listen, then you're also working with the speaker. But if you're merely listening, hearing words and translating those words into opinions, or opposing those words with your own ideas, or comparing those words with what has been said by previous teachers and so on and on and on, then you are not sharing. Then you are wasting your energy. Whereas if one could listen, as you would listen to a bird in the morning, to listen to all the various notes, neither rejecting it nor opposing, but just listen with an intensity, with an affection, with a tremendous enjoyment. Because it's only when we listen with our heart and mind totally, then that very listening is an end in itself. Then you don't have to do anything, because then the seed has taken place, and the seed, if it is vital, will bring its own fruit. But if one merely opposes because you are a Sikh or a Hindu or a Muslim and God knows what else, or you are tortured by a particular problem and you want that particular problem resolved, then you are listening with a fragmentary mind, listening partially. This partial listening, this inattention, is the very essence of waste of energy. Either you listen completely or don't listen at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, all of humanity, the State of the Human Address. The year is 2020, and look where we are. Look with clear vision and truly see. We are at a moment in time where we are on the precipice of a whole new world. And so many of you seem to be committed to letting it completely implode. Well, to an extent, that is precisely what needs to happen. However, if we are not mindful in our process, the current trajectory will be our last. There is this concept around Earth's potential to be at some galactic table with other advanced beings. And as depicted in the film Contact and others, humans are essentially told that they are not ready, which would not be without justification. Now, I'm not saying there is or isn't a galactic table to sit at, but should it not bother us that we, in fact, are, as a species, an intelligent species, still behaving like toddlers in the macrocosm of planetary behavior? Which is, in fact, a reflection of how we see ourselves. And what I see is a land of confusion. Everyone, regardless of race, gender, religion, ethnicity, color, language, sexual orientation, status, tax bracket, and all of the many differentiating characteristics being used to divide us, everyone desires the same basic things at the foundation of their personhood. To have access to clean water and food, not teeming with chemicals. Clean air to breathe. A safe space to live in, affordably. A stellar and honest education system. To be happy. To know that their loved ones have the same. And to be allowed the freedom to enjoy these aspects of life in an environment where progress is always being made. This should not be so difficult. However, our system has failed us in numerous ways and on multiple levels. There is a century-long debate in economics regarding companies' primary and fiduciary responsibility, which is to maximize profits for its shareholders, essentially without any language of rules or regulations of social responsibilities to honor in the process of doing so. This fact of reality has helped allow for the evolution of the corporatocracy and plutocracy we live under today, no question. But we can fight back. Woody Harrelson, in the documentary Ethos, told you that the answer to how to make a difference on a small scale, which, if done by enough people, could transmute into the impact which we seek, is in your buying power. If you change your consuming habits, companies will be forced to change their practices, or fizzle out and die, like many of them should. We now have a law that federally criminalizes animal cruelty. Many celebrate it. So did the meat and dairy industries, as well as companies that continue to practice product safety testing on animals, because they were excluded. They are outside of the purview of this law. If you have not yet forced yourself to watch the very publicly available documentaries and footage showing what indignant crimes against animals are being committed in these industries, you must. We must be the ones to speak softly with strong words to translate their screams. When did we become so heartless and afraid of facing the truth? If we discontinued buying products that are not verified by us ourselves and instead give our dollar to companies with the best practices, we will see the changes we are waiting for. If we stop buying clothing, jackets, logos that we buy because everyone else has one, which are made with animal components obtained through abuse and killing, they would have to stop making them. Have you never asked yourself, why, in a system that gives us nothing for free, do they make sure that of all things on earth and in creation, that we have cow milk at our disposal from elementary school through college? There are answers, and it's not because they care about your bones. You must ask the right questions, the important ones. But we are not taught to ask questions like that by our education system. Just taught to accept as already well understood and well-intentioned purpose, where most often that is simply not the case. If a brand does not ensure that their manufacturing meets the standards of workers' pay and work environment conditions, we do not buy their product. We stand in solidarity with our fellow beings. Does this not make sense to everyone? If their product is for adults, but they are targeting the attention of children in their advertising, like the cigarette companies did, and magazines which discuss adult topics yet are placed at children's eye level in stores everywhere, we do not buy their product. But before this can happen in a meaningful way, enough of you have to care, and enough of you would have to truly desire the same conditions for everyone else around you, and for our future generations. If we do not take seriously the task of considering them now for the betterment of their future, what are we doing? Do we truly believe, both the God and godless, that we're here to be selfish to the point of self-destruction? I don't think that's the case. I think you were systematically broken over generations, denied access to the knowledge of who you really are, what kind of power you actually have, and what wonders you can create. Lied to in your history books, those lied about devastated in the process, those unaware who do not see clearly, comically sure of themselves. But in reality, it is not funny at all. It is that very ignorant bliss that has accelerated our current downward spiral. But still the truths of our past, ancient and recent, are sounding, blaring the trumpets for our mindful attention. The truth about our history, which lives to show us who we really are. The truth about our sciences and the sciences we were never taught, so that we may properly honor the right people, create, and even better, co-create to our highest potential. Imagine what the world would look like if knowledge was freely exchanged and collaborated on by all nations, as opposed to the long-standing environment of hoarding, stealing, protecting, commercializing, and using for self-gain and power over. Aaron Swartz, one of the co-creators of Reddit, a powerful and widely used platform, ultimately died fighting for this very idea. Aaron was 26 years old when he was mentally and emotionally bullied by authorities to the point of suicide. Why are we not talking about him amongst each other? Or in schools, the supposed fosterers of knowledge? Why are we okay with celebrating false heroes rather than the real ones? Have you honestly not figured out what's going on yet? That is to say, at least the obvious inconsistencies? Why has every city in this country not changed Genocide Day, Columbus Day, to Indigenous Peoples Day? Some cities among you have already moved into that mind space. I applaud you, thank you, and say Ashe. How much longer will it take for everyone to understand and admit that Big Pharma does not provide us cures, only treatments? If they cured us, they would have no repeat business, no maximizing of those profits. Better to have us on treatments ongoing, which lead to the necessity of other treatments to treat the ailments caused by the initial treatment. And the sick money cycle continues. Why do we continue to allow this blood-for-profit circumstance to be a part of our lives? Are we not tired of losing loved ones to cancer? If you are ignorant to the fact that there are, have been, and there will continue to emerge ways of curing, moreover preventing that illness, and many others, then you truly do not think as an activated person. It is only when we are compelled to put a stop to a problem that we put ourselves into a space wherein we can find a multitude of solutions that do not warrant overpriced, destructive prescription medications. But they are silenced, squashed, ridiculed, rendered fringe or obscure, attacked through subversion, and when possible have patents bought out and shelved, never to see the light of day. If you are waiting for the hospitals to tell you about them on their own accord, I assure you, you will be waiting for a very, very long time. Unless you get educated on these subjects and see for yourself that nature, where we come from, of which we are a part, has the answers to all of our problems. We do not need synthetic mimicry with deadly side effects and addictions. We need plants for food, medicine, remediation, and materials. Who would think that fungi, mushrooms, could save the world? Well, they can. Paul Stamets, the world's foremost authority on mushrooms and mycelium, has masterfully expressed how this is possible and is doing it. The answers are all in nature. But we have been severed from nature, both the external nature and our own nature, and most critically, our connection to and with it. When that occurred, it became easy to turn a blind eye to the abuse and not care. Now, species that shouldn't be are dying out. Global bodies of water are riddled with pollution, which rains death upon both the aquatic and surrounding land-based ecosystems. Quite obviously, temperatures are climbing. We continue to allow old, dirty technologies to be used at the expense of our air and everything below, and allow companies to trade emissions like this is a game of go fish. But if the fish go, so do we. And we have allowed an assault on our bee population, whom support our very existence, because Monsanto and companies like it are able to wield enough power to hoodwink and legally corner us into poisoning our own land, after having already given us PCBs, helping out with the science of the atomic bomb, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, worked with best friend Dow to create Agent Orange, which today, 60 years later, continues to bio and physiologically plague some of our Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Laotian brothers and sisters, causing birth defects among the people. Aspartame, saccharin, RGBH, GMO crops, and still we allow companies like that to have authority over our food, seeds, agricultural remediation, and to operate outside of the law, above the law. Please pay attention, H.R. 933. We allow ourselves to be run by the media. The top 11,000 mainstream media outlets across radio, print, television, and online on the planet are owned by 6 individuals. 11,000. Please tell me you see the problem with this. Meaning, we have put all of the tangible power of media and the telling of our news into the hands of 6 individuals, each promoting their own interests and agendas, which are those of their collaborators and top dollar advertisers. It is for this reason that I implore you to seek out alternative, free press while it still exists, and see who out there is actually reporting based on true, authentic, nonpartisan journalism. They are out there, and we need more of them. We absolutely need a complete redesign of our information gathering system, one which reflects the true values of physically going on location, seeking, digging, capturing, asking real and hardline questions, scrutinizing responses, and honestly displaying and disseminating what is found. There are presidential candidates from a number of parties, yet at the end of the day, it's always one or the other. 2 choices. That's it. And for the most part, it has been business as usual, regardless of who sits in that seat, which feels quite intentional. This time is even worse. A leader, by minimum standards, should have a decent command of the language spoken by their nation, should be focused on sustainability before profits, as that will ensure any kind of a decent future, whereas the lion's share for a few will not. A leader should be a person who understands people of all backgrounds and can empathize and direct how and where needed. A person who unites rather than divides. A person who knows how to listen and who does not cheat in sports or in business, where they will then cheat with our lives. That means integrity, honor, and humility. A true leader cannot be from either of the two traditional sides of the coin. They would have the intelligence to see the folly of that system and instead approach with a more humanistic and global perspective, so that the focuses and directions lead to a higher frequency existence for everyone. But how can this happen when those in power don't know the first thing about frequency? And neither do the people. Miseducating the people was a careful calculation in producing a machine-like robotic workforce. One that lives so in fear of losing their job, they accept unhappiness, subpar pay, and work conditions, and have no choice but to risk their lives to keep it. Charlotte Iserby tried to warn you about that, but you weren't listening. We must collectively exit this debilitating circumstance for a new paradigm. A renaissance of intellect, discovery, knowledge, purpose, and collective ascension, fueled by human creativity and interconnectedness. A great leader's words and actions must resonate with spirit, and will, if they are born of an unwavering position of love. Love for all Americans, and more importantly, for all people and all living things. If you still don't understand the nature of the military-industrial complex, who is behind it, what companies and subcontractors work for them, what atrocities they are committing using your tax dollars and unknowable amounts beyond that, in order to attain powerful puppeted political positions, access and control to resources, and locations for exponential military base installations, regardless of who dies in the process, ours and theirs alike. If you don't know that in our country we have a space branch of the military before we have healthcare on the ground, if you don't know that you're being tricked into giving back a lot of the money you make by purchasing unnecessary things which will help you not one iota on your journey of spiritual growth and co-creating, if you don't see the need to balance time spent watching the endless streaming media constantly being added to for usurping your attention, unless you are watching or consuming something of value at least most of the time, if you are blind to the fact that pop music and many of its artists across genres mostly highlight baseless desires, self-depreciating behavior, and is contributing to the degradation of our collective frequency, if you don't think there is much you don't know, which you should, if you still haven't realized that the sports you watch and bet on are often controlled, and that the amount of money made in the industry is disproportionate to its actual value added to society, if you aren't constantly growing as a spiritual being and challenging yourself and those around you to do and be better for their own sake and our global sake, if you don't learn something new every day, if you don't challenge your fears, if you aren't seeking to live sustainably in a means that is in alignment with your passions, if you aren't meditating or learning to meditate, if you aren't making sure that your children reflect the very best version of you by being or building towards being the very best version of you, if you don't know what emotional intelligence is, or that it, along with meditation, should be a part of curriculum from preschool on, if you haven't admitted the shortcomings and hypocrisies in many religious institutions, If you still don't know that the overwhelming majority of charities only actually use 5% or less of donations for the implied cause, including the big ones your parents, schools, or John Q. Public told you were honorable. If you don't remember how our government conveniently used 9/11 and the fear and panic it created as justification for creating Homeland Security, the TSA, the Patriot Act, and initializing 2 wars, you should, as they are seizing the advantage once again to erode many legal protections and create new, detrimental, and unjust laws. See the patterns. If you have no understanding of or care about science enough to know how unhealthy our surroundings are due to the oceans of radio waves around us that are not hospitable to our biology, and how much worse 5G could make it without proper study. If you do not understand the for-profit nature of our U.S. prison system and how poorly it does at rehabilitating while making sure it gets the most economic use out of its prisoners as possible, while having the highest incarceration population and rate of recidivism on the planet. If you didn't know that while our government continues to hide knowledge about intelligent, non-human controlled flying objects, while others, France, Belgium, Germany, Brazil, and more, divulged all of their such classified records to their public years ago. Fact. If you don't know what structured water is, or that water has memory, and that you are made up predominantly of water, if you have never witnessed cymatics, the science of the frozen nature of sound in specific geometric shapes, and how these shapes were represented in ancient Egypt, if you do not see the consumer game being played on you, which makes it reasonable to buy a slightly newer version of a product every year in order to simply have the newest version, while spending the same or greater amount than you spent the year before on products that should last several years at the very least. If you still believe that the Great Pyramids were tombs, and that they were built by dragging impossibly heavy stones on logs for hundreds of miles and using pulleys, if you have not discovered the beauty of the quantum sciences, sound, and electromagnetism, if you have never looked at vortex-based mathematics or sacred geometry and the magic they reveal, if you are making an effort to copy the same mindless hair pull style GIFs on social media, if you still lack the capacity to tell the people you care about that you love them, if you do not know that cannabis and industrial hemp can save the world and quickly help any third world country level up and increase their health, economy, and self-sustainability in ways that nothing else can, if you are in the dark about the truth that there exist viable, implemented, or implementable solutions for just about any Earth humanity problems before us, if you don't know that plants can communicate with each other and also with you, if you didn't know that a decade ago, out of love, honor, and respect for her abundance, refuge, and beauty, the nation of Bolivia passed legislation titled Law of the Rights of Mother Earth, a tremendous action of understanding, giving nature the status and protection she deserves and requires to live a happy existence and to provide us with the same. Is this not how we should all strive to treat our mothers? Why should Mother Earth be any different? And if we are not doing everything we can to protect, heal, and elevate the condition of our indigenous populations, and to tell their true story, then we cannot honestly say that we are putting our collective best foot forward. It might not go down as the worst idea ever to start taking some advice from those blessed to have been the original custodians of this planet. If you fall into the category of never having heard of or thought about any of the aforementioned subject matters, you have been sufficiently molded, and your questioning spirit has been snuffed out. But I have good news. It can be resuscitated. It is time to start knowing Earth as the sentient, conscious organism that it is, of which our most ancient ancestors were tasked with being the custodians of. This is obvious in that the Earth would do just fine without us, necessitating that our being a part of it and its growth, development, and well-being is a gift. One we will squander if changes are not made now. Brother Tupac broke it down quite succinctly. It's time for us as a people to start making some changes. Let's change the way we eat, let's change the way we live, and let's change the way we treat each other. You see, the old way wasn't working, so it's on us to do what we gotta do to survive. What you put into your body is what you get out. By understanding the laws of nature, frequency, cellular experience, and exchange, you would start to make very different choices about what you choose to fuel your life force. So many still devouring factory-farmed meats and dairy, all coming from a life of horror, terror, turmoil, depression, anger, fear, and anxiety. And we wonder why those same issues are so pervasive in our society, requiring sustained pharmaceutical chemicals to combat what can be solved by changing diet, lifestyle, perspective, and habits. If we employ and empower the system to produce and sustain our general environment for life, then we are the beneficiaries of their work. It follows then that we let things devolve to where they are now, as well that we together can steer our future in a direction more resonant with spirit, where our decisions are founded on a full and true body of knowledge and are for the greater good, rather than the highest bidders. We cannot have a system which encourages and herds generations of people into jobs that do not reflect their passion. This will always lead to a decline in the levels and standards of service in those positions, as well as unhappy lives, which ultimately affects all of us. Do not become a teacher unless you love to teach. Otherwise, you contribute to the decline in education levels where we already have a subpar, poorly functioning foundation. By nature, you should love what you do, as only then can you do it meaningfully, to the highest order, and with great outcome and results for yourself and those for whom you are working. Anything less is counter-civilized and allows for standards and progress to plummet. I also want to touch upon forgiveness. It seems there must be a mechanism of understanding in place before forgiveness can become natural. By simply accepting a few laws of life, that every individual with whom we cross paths has had his or her own ultra-unique set of circumstances and environments from birth till now, including aspects biologically or spiritually imprinted from generations past, of which the earliest experiences shape how we internalize, process, and react to all future experiences, which is what gives us the present version of the person we are and of the person we're crossing paths with. And sometimes, many times, people are unable to perceive outside of their current scope of perception without a tap on the shoulder from the right person, who can demonstrate or articulate an idea that strongly resonates with the person, which also conflicts with prior sureties. This is when they have a paradigm shift, and the lens through which they see the world has expanded both in magnification power, while simultaneously having a greater field of view, allowing for a more refined image of the past, present, and future. If this is implied, we now understand. Understanding shatters human barriers, as well makes forgiveness as effortless as breathing. The ability to look at those who've wronged you and at yourself for your own wrongdoing and understand that it was where each of you respectively were at in your spiritual development at the time, and be able to forgive those circumstances so as to not be weighed down by lingering negative energy is a superpower. One that must be cultivated and practiced by all if we are to be able to move forward together. However, that is not to say that those who've displayed a consistent, long-term, recurring disdain for others and society should not face consequences for those actions. They should. But let's let go of the small stuff and keep that shimmering weightlessness in our steps as we journey forward. To listen. Earlier, you heard Brother Krishnamurti as he waxed passionate on the order of listening. I wanted your attention then, and I want it more still now. What does it mean to truly listen to someone or something? I have seen how many do not practice the art of listening in a way that is meaningful. On their phones, cutting the speaker off to voice their own immediate thoughts, interjecting about unrelated topics, all of which communicate an impatient, selfish, disinterested listener who is not doing the minimum requirements for themselves to even be in the proper state of consciousness to receive any possible messages, lessons, and insights that may come from the speaker. Therefore, to the speaker, why should they continue to give of their energy, which is life force, to someone who shows no acknowledgement of their life force by attentively and without filter listening? Despite all of this, we cannot continue to blame the system from here on out. Its character, their characters, have already been clearly defined. Now it's time we showed ours. A collective, conscious agreement to alchemize the planet into a better version of itself in the immediate present by first having a paradigm shift within. It is imperative that we disembark the ship headed nowhere and stay sure on common ground under common law. We are not at sea, yet are ruled under maritime admiralty law. Why? So many questions you have not asked. And that is precisely the circumstance that frauds and con artists prey upon. Which is why the law says ignorance is no excuse, yet the law is only taught to and valuably used by those who seek to practice it, for those who don't know it. And they too capitalize on your ignorance. And laws are being passed every day which necessarily contradict the ideas of freedom and progress. So few of you have been listening to the undercurrent, yet all of you are affected. And this has been the pattern for far too long. We must remember to love ourselves unconditionally and let go of negative emotional relics which serve only to dampen and stagnate our ability to grow. And in loving ourselves, truly know how to show love to others, who are extensions and reflections of ourselves. Love and the capacity to create without limit are our most sacred and powerful blessings from Source. Moreover, if we are to thrive, we must never cease to ask ourselves what we are doing with those blessings. I would like to take this time to begin the crescendo of my closing thoughts. I would like to send my love, respect, thoughts, prayers, and thanks to all of those on the various front lines of this current storm we find ourselves in, staring down a virus. As well to those who are personally affected or have loved ones seriously affected by this scourge. You know, it's funny. I've had the title of this speech in my head for almost 20 years now. Lightning struck for me to begin writing this in early January. I've always been pretty well plugged into the ether, and I knew the time was now. Half of it poured out in the blink of an eye, about 45 minutes to an hour. It then sat for a little over a month. The second wave came through in a second instant. A week after that, I knew it was time to start editing, adding, taking out, recording, and listening to. Then the pandemic hit, and I find there to be no more befitting a time for these words than now. I am convinced that this is the first instance in my existence on Earth wherein lies the potential to have the entire planet's ears at the same time. And with that being the case, it is therefore the precise moment in which we are, as individuals, as communities, and as countries, as a species, supposed to be seeing with renewed and evolved clarity both the truths of our condition and the tremendous opportunity that we have before us to take pause at our individual and collective lives and reevaluate our mindsets, methods, priorities, and most importantly, the frequencies upon which we operate this co-created reality. Fighting an enemy we can't see and which does not differentiate between color, neighborhood, race, status, gender, and so on, reminds us to respect our mortality and the need for things to be better, because we can do better, all of us. And if we are wise enough to unify and work through this together across borders and boundaries, we will have ensured the expeditious resolution of this and any other problems we face now and in the future. Just look at how quickly nature responded when we shut down the machine. Beautiful and curious animals happily roaming developed places. The image of emissions over China going from covered to non-existent. Take this time to break old, unhelpful habits and to create new ones that promote healthy growth. Spend time with your loved ones. Reach out to those you have been neglecting. Spend time with yourself. Meditate. Read. Write. Learn something new. Look to the future with recalibrated, enhanced lenses which filter out the noise, the lies, agendas, and growth-inhibiting methods, practices, and behaviors. Don't ever be fooled into believing that simply because you can't see something or that no one else has done it, that you can't create it. Taking away your power was a difficult task, but you remembering it is not. Everything is happening right on time. Many religions and cultures around the world agree on the cycles of our experience over time. In Greek astrology and astrotheology, we are entering the age of Aquarius, the golden age of enlightenment, self-growth, and unity. In Hinduism and yogic knowledge, we are entering the Satya Yuga, a nice long age where humanity is righteous and devoid of wickedness. The Hopi indigenous peoples' prophecy of the fifth world is also set to be transitioned into at this very time. A world where mineral, plant, animal, and human are understood to be equally alive, allowing for an intelligent communication to happen between each world. Where we no longer need to pray or affirm things into being, we collectively assume them, thus making them so. The Maya, Cherokee, Tibetans, ancient Egyptians, and others spoke of the Great Year, a 24,000-year cycle, which also is now in transition. So all of the ancients agree of the coming new age of existence. Why not usher it in with beautiful, collective intent? My purpose is simple. Realize that there is no better time than right now for activated people to unite and harness their focused mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual capacities in order to redirect the direction of our world by strengthening communities and connecting them, seeking out and implementing solutions, building trust, and working to reshape and give breath to the concept of sustainability, while intentionally preserving health, freedoms, security, privacy, safety, and the unwavering purpose of progress. The only direction we ever had to look in as individuals in order to be a part of the change was inward. We are our own answer to our own problems. We always have been. We collectively made the mistake of putting our lives into the hands of a few who have not done justice to their position. Let us now look for new leadership. Look around the world and see which countries are doing what in ways that truly reflect the highest interests of the people. Make sure that you defend the voices of reason and change with every fiber in your being, so that they can never again be silenced. As I also continue using this time to rewire and rewrite my own internal conscious world, I remind you in closing that we must be or be working towards being the best version of ourselves, so that we may love ourselves and each other. Only then will we manifest a system reflecting that love. Realize yourself. Realize others. You are an empath. Remember your intuition. Listen to it. The shift is happening now. I say all of this as your brother, as your equal, who wants the best for you, for all of us, always. Let's bring the magic back. Let's choose to evolve. Let's choose spirit. Love is my religion. I love you all. I just wanted to do my part in helping to open the lines of communication. Let's do this. Peace. I am with you. Ah, I see you got my message. I wonder what you'll do with it.